Are dudes too cool for books now, or is there just something deeper going on? Because whenever I tell one of the guys that I've gotten into reading, especially fiction, I almost always get the same response in some form or another. But it's typically along the lines of like, dude, I haven't picked up a book since high school. And these are guys who will happily spend hours gaming or binging an entire TV series over the weekend, so they clearly enjoy stories. They're just not reading them. And the more I thought about it, the more I started wondering why. So of course, my little pea brain stays up to study this phenomenon, and it turns out researchers don't actually think adult men stop reading for any single reason. It's more like 4 or 5 or 6 or 30 different reasons that have all kind of piled on top of each other, and honestly, the more that I looked into it, the more it sounded like my own life. You see, the first thing is pretty obvious. Books are competing with literally everything under the sun. Think about what happens when you have 20 minutes of free time. I mean, you could pick up a novel that takes a little bit of mental effort to get back into, or you could open YouTube, you could open TikTok, you could open up Netflix, or be a weirdo and open ChatGPT and have a full-fledged conversation with AI if you're really that bored. Every single one of those options gives you instant entertainment with almost no effort. It's not that reading like suddenly became boring, but rather like everything else became incredibly good at stealing your attention away. And guess who else is guilty? Me. Dude, I didn't even read for years. I'd watch self-improvement videos, I'd listen to podcasts, I'd gamed, and I consumed whatever the algorithm decided I should be watching next. And because of that, reading just kind of disappeared without me ever like realizing it. I mean, take a second to think about it. And I mean, seriously, can you even like recall the moment that you stopped reading? You know, it's actually a fact that when kids are young, boys and girls tend to read at the same rate, but the split tends to happen during adolescence when like reading stops becoming something that is required to do. So once it does become natural, a lot of boys naturally drift towards sports and gaming and YouTube, or just simply hanging out with their friends. And if nobody around them is encouraging them to read anymore, that habit slowly starts to die. And I feel like a lot of us are kind of familiar with that, right? I mean, if you stop going to the gym for 5 years, getting back into shape is a lot harder. And in my opinion, reading kind of works the same way. The longer you go without picking up a book, the harder it is to grab one and then just open up to the first page. I also think that a big culprit as to why most men don't read anymore, especially fiction, not talking nonfiction, we're talking fiction, is just due to our culture. I mean, you'll see plenty of dudes who, if they do read, it's typically some form of self-development book. And reading fiction is just kind of like, I hate to say it, but it's kind of like reserved for the girls. I mean, walk into almost any bookstore and you'll probably notice it. A lot of book clubs are mostly women. Not all of them, but most of them. BookTok is entirely dominated by women, and BookTube has a huge female audience as well as a ton of female creators. And romance, I mean, it's one of the biggest genres in publishing. But I want to be clear that like none of that is inherently bad. But if you are a guy and you're looking around, it's not hard to see how you might subconsciously think maybe like reading just isn't really for guys. Nobody explicitly tells you that, but culture kind of has this funny way of communicating those ideas without saying them out loud. So then what do? We change the format on how we consume these stories. So instead of reading a fantasy novel, they'll spend 150 hours playing Skyrim, which I love Skyrim, by the way. Fucking go Dragonborn. Instead of reading a Western, they'll binge 8 hours on Netflix of Yellowstone. Now, I personally gamed, if you can't tell. I watched YouTube every single day. Okay, well, I still watch YouTube every day, but in significantly better moderations. I listened to podcasts on every drive and every single walk that I went on. And I thought I had somehow grown out of reading. Or maybe I just thought that I was better than it, which is honestly worse to think. But earlier this year, on one fateful day, I walked into a Barnes & Noble and I picked up my first fiction book. And for me at that moment, something clicked. it reminded me that books do something other forms of media just can't. Because when you sit down to read, your brain has to actively engage. You are imagining the characters, you're building the world, you're reading the dialogue, and your mind is decoding all of this information and playing a movie in the back of your dome. The brain is freaking awesome, dude. Personally, I didn't really realize how much I missed that. But I mean, come on, becoming an adult doesn't exactly help. When you become an adult, you got work, you got kids, you got laundry, and you got a house that somehow always needs something fixed. So finding the time and the energy to sit on a couch with a book is a lot harder than watching 20 minutes of YouTube on your phone before bed. So, I mean, that is real. Once reading became something that I genuinely started to look forward to, I suddenly found 30 minutes here and 30 minutes there. But to be candid, like, there were a lot of other factors that played a part in my personal enjoyment of reading. The biggest of all was finding a genre that I thoroughly enjoyed. For me, that's fantasy and horror. That might change down the road. So I don't think that dudes are like too cool for reading anymore. I just think that it's a mixture of technology or culture and just flat out being an adult. For me, reading fiction has given me the ability to slow down with this hobby. It pulled me away from constantly chasing the next video, chasing the next notification, the next dopamine hit. And maybe that's why I've been able to stick with it for the last 7 months. Now, I want to be clear that I am not trying to make any claims in this video that books are objectively better than any other hobbies you might have or you might enjoy. I am just personally saying that I have really enjoyed the experience that I've had and that I've been having lately. So if you or someone you know hasn't picked up a book since high school, I want to say that I get it. But if you've ever wondered like whether reading is still worth your time, maybe all it takes is finding the one book that reminds you of why people have been telling stories this way for a really long time. So I feel like this is a slight departure from the other content that I've created, but let me know down in the comments if getting back into reading has been something that you've personally struggled with, and if you enjoyed this video, the best way to show that is by dropping a like. Oh, and I did drop a video a little while back with a few book recommendations that you can find here somewhere. Peace out.